Don't get mad at me, but
I love you.
Is it true you pimped in Paris?
Yes.
You were pimp in Paris?
Yes, I was.
Tell me.
But, well, that was different. That was different, Dodson.
No, I admire that, actually.
Well, I would never have revealed it if Arthur Lawrence hadn't outed me in his book.
Oh,
He told
it's
about,
all over the web.
Huh?
It's all over the web.
Well, I know that. But Arthur talked about how when he went to Paris, he said Jim Lipton was the sexual guide to Paris. And
Sexual guide to Paris.
That's what he called me. And he was there with a group with Stella Adler, with Farley Granger, with whom he was at that time, I guess, involved.
Yeah.
And they were all there, but I knew Stella. I had already begun training with Stella when I was in Paris, and so I went there to make a movie in Greece. Then I was living in Paris for a while, and so I met them all through there, and they discovered what I was doing, and they all wanted to have this experience. So I arranged it. He wrote about it in his most recent book, and in his final book, and so I was out. There's nothing I could do about it. So when I wrote my memoir, I wrote the chapter on Paris, and then I gave it to Kedekai to read, and then...
No, but it's not in the... I don't remember reading it in Inside.
Oh my God, every word of it is in there.
Huh?
Every word of it is in there.
I didn't remember it.
Take a look at the book.
I read the book.
Take a look at it again. Oh boy, is it in there. You must have just missed it.
How long did you do it?
A year. And... well, it was the only way I couldn't get there was no such thing as a green card, and Paris was still poor. It was only a few years after the war, and so men couldn't get jobs, and certainly in a male chauvinist society like Paris of that time, the women couldn't get work at all, and so it was perfectly respectable for them to go into what was called le milieu. And they came in...
The milieu?
Le milieu. And they were in it, and then they got out. I mean, there were women there. There were young girls who were going through college. There were women who were supporting their husbands going through college. There were women who just were desperately needed the money for various reasons. They were beautiful and young and extraordinary, and there was no opprobrium because it was completely regulated. Every week they had to be inspected medically. And there were the great bordellos were still flourishing there in those days before the sheriff of Paris, a woman, turned them down, closed them down. And so it was a different time. And
so basically you just set up as a convenience for...
Well, I had met this young woman because when I first went to Paris, a French friend of mine said, let's go to Place Pigalle and Rue Pigalle. And I said, oh, great, let's go. I knew about it. And we walked in, two women. We were approached by all sorts of prostitutes, and I don't believe in buying sex. I really don't. I think if you can't earn it on your own, then you don't deserve it. So
I believe in buying it. So.
Well, in any event, so I certainly didn't then, don't now. But so these two women came up to us, and they said, "Would you like to see two women make love?" Well, I was very young then, I'd just come from New York, and I thought that was rather glamorous. So we paid them to do that, which they did. And then subsequently, after they'd done this in the whorehouse, then we went down, and my friend, who was a rough Parisian guy, he saw these curtains, and he pushed away through curtains, and it was a bar where in the bordello, where the girls and their pimps, their pimps. No, nobody else would allow, just the girls and the pimps were allowed, and they're called macro, mec. If you saw Irma la Douce, you know all about the mec. And that's where they hung out. So we sat down, and they said, get out, and he wouldn't move, and he spoke this rough Parisian French. So then the two girls who had been made love came down to have a drink before they went out on the street again. And they saw us, we were now friends, and so they sat down with us, that made us acceptable. And then one of them, Regine, became a friend of mine, and I would go back night after night to visit her, just to visit.
Right.
Because buying her services then, at that point, seemed like a sacrilege. And it just was, and for her to give it away to me free in the midst of her work, it was impossible. So we became friends. And I would go there night after night, we became great friends. And then finally, when I ran out of money, she said to me, you're going to become... I don't want you to go. I said, I have to go home. She said, no, you don't. I'll get arranged for you. So she arranged for me to do it. I had to be okayed by the underworld, because otherwise they would have found me floating in the Seine.
Did you have a stable of more than one girl?
Yeah, that whole bordello. I represented them all, but her especially. And then I would go to the American Express next to the Garnier in the Place de l'Opéra, and each day there would be all the American tourists, and people go and say, "Would you like? I can arrange a tour to Chartres. I can arrange a tour to Notre Dame." I would say, "I could arrange a tour to Pigalle. You want to see some sex?" Oh, I did a roaring business with her and with the other girls, and I was able to live for a year.
It seems so romantic.
And huh?
It seems so romantic.
Well,
to me.
it was.
Paris,
It was then. It really was then. And read about it in the book. And it was a great friendship. And well, you read about it in the book now. You'll get the whole picture.
I wanted you to tell me. I wanted you to tell me. That's why.
And also a pimp exploits the women, but in the macro, they didn't exploit them. They represented them. They were like agents, and they took a cut. That's how I lived. You got a piece of it. See? Hold on one second.
I just got a couple more questions.
One second.